What's up, family? So we got New York City starts paying migrants $4,000 each to leave when they brought them here in the first place. And then I feel like if you really suspect, you know, and really look at it and put our thinking caps on for a minute, Americans that are homeless, hungry, or ignored, but there's people illegally entering the country getting thousands of dollars, free housing, healthcare, clothing, and food. It's just incredibly disrespectful to our fellow Americans, right? And it's the Democratic Party, and this is just who we are voting for, and we have to be more logical and get our emotions out of it and stop reacting off our emotions on who we vote for, because this is a taste of what's yet to come, right? Um, and if you really think about it, man, you gotta vote, and the way you vote is in the trajectory and the direction in which the country is going to go. Billions of tax dollars could have helped Americans get right back on track after COVID. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, just really think about it, man. You're rewarding them instead of deporting them, wasting money in so many ways on others instead of our own people. It's just a disgrace. You know what I'm saying? $1,200 per day for a family of 3 people that are here illegally, and that's more what people are putting. That's more the individuals are getting in Social Security that they have paid in, and they get that in a day. So can you imagine? So, man, dumping 200,000 plus people, man, it's ludicrous. That's all I can say, man. You know, it's like Christmas for illegals in America. Meanwhile, retired citizens who pay taxes and FICA towards their Social Security and Medicare, and they got to recertify every year for their benefits. It's a slap in the face, and man, let's go.
Pregnant women who are currently residing in a city shelter. It's called the Asylum.
So after spending $5 billion caring for asylum seekers, New York has realized it's got a huge problem because the 65,000 people it's housing don't have enough money to move out of its shelters and live on their own, which is why the city's now going to pay them $4,000 each to leave.
Long nights with loud music, kids playing outside, and garbage around the neighborhood. It all started when the once 128-room Wyndham Hotel was turned into a New York.
And that's what it tells you here, man. So being an American citizen isn't easy as they thought it was. And now they want to go back. You know what I'm saying? But the New York mayor, man, the way I feel like, and this is just my opinion, I don't have no evidence of extorting taxpayers' money like that. It's just crazy. When you got homeless veterans out here that get nothing, and these people are getting paid more than people make after taxes in a single month. Just think about that. You know what I'm saying? Man, it's just crazy.
City migrant shelter.
I have a lot of loud music. I have big speakers over there in the corner.
Enough is enough. Please do not renew that lease and give us back our community.
All right, a new pilot program from the city awarding up to $4,000 grants to migrant families who exit the shelter system and find their own housing.
The one-time grant only to be used for first and last month's rent, security deposits, moving expenses, and household supplies.
Our mayor is a slumlord.
City council members and immigration advocates blasting Mayor Eric Adams and his administration for implementing a policy that evicts migrant families with children after 60 days.
We've done 150 families. I think we've had one person from a family, not even the whole family, come back. So that is, in my mind, a very strong success rate.
We're not against migrants, however, we're against spending public funding to host them, to give them out like monthly stipends.
And you got to check the salary of nonprofit organizations executives, right? Because I feel like they're money launderers at its best. You know, I bet you government officials are getting a cut. You know what I'm saying? But you keep voting this way, you guess what you're going to get. You know, and it's crazy, man. broke the law, and then they get paid to
So
stay.
New York City has
paid to
decided
come,
that it might be cheaper to
paid
pay
to
people
leave.
to leave than to pay for them to stay. But what everyone's missing about this plan, paying people to move, is it's happening after we've already spent billions on shelters, which were supposed to be temporary and were supposed to help people move out and live on their own. But since that's not happening, it makes it look like the asylum crisis has backfired on our city in a way none of our leaders expected. Because although over 200,000 people seeking asylum and a better life...
Look, man. And then how they gonna pay their rent? You know, after they move in. Any landlord with a brain is not gonna rent to these people, and they're gonna end up with squatters. They will have to pay to evict. So just the process alone is a nightmare. And if they do get evicted months from now, where they go? You know what I'm saying? Because I heard that they're giving $4,000 to get up out of the homeless shelters because it's too much money just to go get a place as a down payment. So, man, all this is getting paid at the U.S. taxpaying individuals' dime. And that's the reality of it.
Welcomed into our shelters, many are still there over a year after first moving in, revealing the better life everyone's looking for doesn't exist in America's most expensive city. And that's true for most people, not just asylum seekers. Because although from the beginning of this crisis, a plan existed to move everyone into expensive former luxury hotels or massive controversial tent shelters, which somehow cost just as much as the hotels to run, the very people who fled poverty and are now in our care are not getting the help they need to move up New York City's highly specialized, service-based economic ladder. Which doesn't make sense because many an economic expert has preached sermon after sermon about how the asylum crisis was going to be the best thing ever for everyone involved. Yet it turns out that's been a false prophecy, a heresy, because no plan ever existed to get people into the workforce so they could live on their own. And that brings us to the real reason why New York City is now paying people to get on a bus like that and leave town. Our shelter system has been turning vulnerable people into economic prisoners who are trapped and
Sound like
can't
paid vacation
leave.
to me.
Because not only are
No
there zero
taxpayers footing the
employers
bill.
lining up at our shelters offering the jobs people will need, many asylum seekers spent whatever they had coming here believing in the promised existence of gainful employment and a shot at the American dream. And that's a problem because in order for people to move out of these shelters and live on their own, they're going to need to earn enough to do it. But since many aren't finding jobs, they're now in need of perpetual care from a city that never thought this crisis would double its homeless population in just 1 year. And here we are now, paying asylum seekers to leave town, and if they refuse this generous offer from the city, our officials are prepared to send them away empty-handed.
Wix gives you the power.
Man. This is crazy. That's all I gotta say. It is wild.
So this plan to pay asylum seekers enough money so that they can move out of the shelter system, it's controversial for several reasons. First, the amount of money that the city's offering folks isn't enough for them to stay in many of the same neighborhoods where they are now living, which some people are upset about. Also, while this plan is taking place, new individuals are still arriving in New York City for the very first time who will need a shelter placement and then in a few weeks might also need to receive a check so that they have enough money to move out of that very same shelter, revealing that the asylum crisis here is far from over.
The New York City Department of Homeless Services is offering up to $4,000 to migrant families with children and pregnant women who are currently residing in a city shelter. It's called the Asylee Move Out Assistance Program, a pilot program that began last December.
So this program, it's not new. It's actually 6 months old, but it's in the news now because it was a program that wasn't widely publicized. And on the surface, it looks like this program is just going to be another expensive failure because the city's shelters are so full, families are being evicted after 60 days, plus they're barred from reapplying for shelter unless they can prove extenuating circumstances. But the fact that we're now paying people to move reveals that those shelters have not done their job. Their job is to prepare people to live on their own, but obviously that's not working, and now we're evicting people, and we've got to come up with the money for them to go and get a new apartment. The whole system has failed. Because if New York City were indeed this promised land of opportunity and employment, they wouldn't be stuck permanently living in shelters. No, they'd find jobs and move out on their own, but that's not happening. And this new program, it's highly controversial because it's very expensive to give everybody enough money for rent and security for a new apartment. And even though it very well may help people finally make the move on to independent life outside of the city's shelters, there are others who say that a program like this, it just acts as a magnet for more people to come to New York seeking asylum.
It's still just putting a Band-Aid on one issue and creating a problem for another issue.
In the first place.
The one-time grant is modeled after the enhanced one-shot deal program for those in the traditional homeless shelters, only to be used for first and last month's rent, security deposits, moving expenses, and household supplies. It really is.
So first month's rent, security deposit, $4,000. That's a lot of money. But the program actually includes other benefits. It also includes $1,000 gift cards to help families with other items they might need in a new apartment. Now, will this help some people get out of the shelter and move? Absolutely, but there's a huge problem with it because it's not open to everyone. As it turns out, this program is only open to people who have work authorization in this country. And those are the people who we've been told have everything they need to succeed and shouldn't need to be paid in order to help them move. They've got the work permission, they've come here, they've sought asylum, they've done everything right. But for some reason, they're not earning enough money to make the move happen.
Okay, so what about the typical American that's not earning enough money? You go down to welfare and ask them, can you get some money to help you move into a new place or give you $1,000 gift card for household items and see what they tell you as a typical American.
Themselves. Whatever employment opportunities are out there aren't enough for them to move out of the very shelters that they were only supposed to need until they had work permission. And we're in a situation now where many folks have been stuck in these shelters for as long as they've been open, with some families having been there for over a year. And if you've got work permission and you can have a job and there are job openings, but those jobs don't pay enough for you to leave, how can you unless someone steps in and pays your way? The city's got itself between a rock and a hard place on this one.
The money is coming from DHS existing budget. The families themselves have to find housing, and once they do, they work with the not-for-profit providers operating at the shelters who help them with the process.
So in order to make this all happen, we can't just give people money. No, we need an infrastructure system to help them use it to find a place to live, which is where these nonprofits come in. And one of the big controversies with this entire asylum crisis is that many of these nonprofits, they're connected with for-profit companies that own places like former luxury hotels or offer services like food preparation that the shelters need access to, which has created a money-making opportunity of sorts, which revolves around the plight of folks who came here seeking a better life and now aren't getting it. And now, behind the scenes, more money has to be spent just to put us in a position where we can pay people's first month's rent and security in order for them to get the keys.
Nah. We giving them money to leave. You gave them money to come here. You giving them money to leave, bro. How does that, with common sense, how does that solve anything?
A new apartment where they can work and afford life by themselves. Yet in defense of this practice, the money that is going to be used for these rental payments, it's coming from overflow funds that have already been sent to the city's Department of Homeless Services for caring for asylum seekers. But critics say it's not surprising that the shelter industrial complex we've got here intends to spend everything it's given and isn't trying to save the city any money or to operate more efficiently. And this comes after the city spent insane amounts of money caring for people. Look at this, $387 per person each day.
And that was the beginning of the year. That was March 12th, the second month of the new year. New York City spending $387 per migrant, or I should say, per migrant each day.
Means that a family of 3 costs the city $1,200 a day just to take care of. No wonder they think it's cheaper to pay people to move out and live on their own. But even though it's cheaper, does that mean it's a good system in the first place? There are some people who say that it doesn't.
It makes financial sense because shelter is very expensive and this is a targeted one-time payment.
It would be a great support to be able to have our own space, to be able to socialize.
She got her nails done. She got her hair done. She got her nose piercing, eyebrows done. Like nothing wrong with her to me.
Directly with her families.
So, yes, it's probably cheaper. Yes, it's helping some people, but that's not the real issue here. The real issue here is that this is the last step in this whole crisis. Someone leaving the shelter, and we're paying people to take that step. That means the whole thing isn't working. Which has many people making the claim that the asylum crisis has never really been about helping asylum seekers. Yes, it's named after them, but it's really been a massive transfer of money from the government and its citizens to private companies who've benefited off all of these plans that have...
Giving the food, cleaning, you know, whoever offered the services to so-called help out, they got to cut up money for offering these services to be a part of this whole agenda.
Anybody do anything except waste a whole bunch of money. And if you think about it, with over 200,000 people having come to New York seeking asylum, if they were all just given $4,000 to find an apartment after arriving here, the entire asylum crisis would have cost $800 million. Yet it's cost us $5 billion to get to this exact same point, paying people to help them move. But this also reveals something else about this entire crisis, because even though the city seems to have tons of money to play with, it seems that housing people indefinitely who are having trouble integrating with the city's economy on their own is having unintended consequences that nobody expected.
Boy, this is a disaster in itself, bro. But whoever voted for it, this is the outcome you get. You know, this is what you asked for, right?
So here we have your typical New York City neighborhood. You've got charming apartments, you've got little windows, it's all very nice, and many neighborhoods have been like this for decades, but some of them are now changing in ways that residents of them did not expect. And there are some who say it's happening because the city's system of sheltering people in order to help them get on their feet isn't working out as intended, and many people have found themselves living in shelters for a very long time, turning what was supposed to be a temporary system of care into a permanent fixture in many parts of town.
Long nights with loud music, kids playing outside, and garbage around the neighborhood is what tenants at this building on 10th Street and 44 Drive in Long Island City have been dealing with for the past few months.
So as we're learning today, this wasn't the plan when the asylum crisis started. Perpetual housing operations that will exist for as long as the crisis continues. No, this was all supposed to be temporary. And for a very long time, many have maintained that the one thing the asylum crisis has been missing was work permission. But that article's from a year ago, and now the people who have work permission, they're now being given money so that they can move. Yet for most of last year, we were told that that was the thing stopping people from integrating with society and making it. We were told that if people just had jobs, doing delivery or working at restaurants, that everything would work out and we wouldn't.
The problem is it takes away from a typical American and the individuals who actually are legal, who did the whole process of becoming legal to be a legal citizen in America. I don't understand how they're getting money for a system they're not even putting nothing into. How do you get something out from something you're not putting into? This is crazy. This is crazy, bro.
Need to pay for people to live in luxury hotels. But that hasn't been reality, with many people in these shelters not finding the employment opportunities necessary to help them leave. And that's led to conflicts in many neighborhoods where you've got residents saying that things have changed, not necessarily for the better, because you've got basically a full-time presence of folks who were told that, hey, move into one of these shelters, we'll help you get a job, and then you can move out. Well, that hasn't happened for them either. This is a tough situation for everybody. And the real problem is that the jobs many have been able to get just aren't enough to pay the rent near many of the shelters they're now living in. For example, these midtown one-bedroom apartments are around $4,000 to $5,000 per month. In order to get the keys to a place like this, you're gonna have to have a six-figure income. That's insane. And you know who we're not hearing a whole lot from at this moment in time? All of the people that advocated for
like Mayor Eric Adams.
Crisis as a way of solving worker shortages, because if there really are endless job opportunities out there for people who want them, boy, we could really use them now, couldn't we?
It all started when the once 128-room Wyndham Hotel was turned into a New York City migrant shelter. Neighbors have seen kids riding up and down the sidewalk, jumping off porches, and at times...
And why does anyone think that this is happening? Are we really to expect that people who came here thinking that they were going to have a better life are going to be happy staying in one-room hotels that have no kitchen 24 hours a day. What, they're not allowed to leave? This is what happens when you create this kind of system, which is failing people. Yet recent polling indicates that the majority of New Yorkers still favor these right-to-shelter policies that lead to these types of situations all over town, with large groups of able-bodied people just seemingly hanging out without a whole lot going on. And it's hard to blame people for being in a living situation that they do not control and may not understand and can't leave for doing any of what residents that claim they support right to shelter are upset about. Like cooking their own food. There's been disputes over the quality of food in shelters for months now. Yet as much as local residents appear to have problems with how the asylum crisis plays out in their neighborhoods, they're not making the connection between what's happening and what we were told by our elected officials, who by and large still favor the ongoing nature of this whole situation.
Gorro has been living at the shelter with his wife and 2 kids for approximately 3 months. He says people at the shelter have to sign in and out, and a 9 p.m. curfew was implemented as of last Thursday.
I see a lot of people after 9 p.m., a lot of kids after. I see.
Bro, they is not going to stay in that one. They is not going to stay in that hotel all day. They're just not.
12 o'clock and 1 o'clock in front of the building.
You know, I feel bad for the people that are involved in this, because this gentleman, he didn't decide to have a shelter built across from where he's been living. But at the exact same time, how can we expect this crisis, which has a permanent nature to it, to just be over in a few weeks? The whole thing has been designed to kind of just go on forever, funding these hotels, funding these nonprofits, funding these food providers. Because it's pretty obvious now that even though there was a massive plan to move people into shelters, there was never any plan that existed to connect them with a meaningful way out. And that's why this seems to just be going on month after month. And when you contrast the situation of many asylum seekers with traditional homeless shelters, those don't have the same sorts of time limits or mass evictions. Those tend to house people for a lot longer because each person is different and each person needs different types of help. But the asylum shelters are more of a human recycling program to a degree.
And tenants also told me they know those families need a place to live and be safe, but they want more regulation and more supervision to guarantee the safety of the neighborhood and of those kids. Of course, we reached out.
I don't know if this is about regulations, because you can't regulate what happens when you move people into a hotel room and just tell them to wait. Now, the mayor's been...
It's just going to build chaos.
Clear on this. People shouldn't spend their whole lives in shelters. That's inhumane. Yet that's what our laws force the mayor to do. And even if we had a different mayor, perhaps a Republican mayor, they would be bound by the same right to shelter requirements and regulations that have perpetuated this crisis and have cost the city $5 billion so far, caring for people who are now being paid to move out. Now, hopefully, those who leave will finally be able to start their lives, something New York City, with its lousy job market and high cost of living, hasn't enabled many people to go ahead and do. And it hasn't been the promised land of opportunity that so many people checked into shelters believing they were about to experience. What do you think? Has that been the problem here since day one? Is New York City just the wrong place for people to come and try to get started? Let me know.
Bro, it's not about it being the wrong place or the right place. It shouldn't be here. That's what concludes it, because at the end of the day, it's about doing things the right way, and legally, I support the legal process of doing things the right way, in which they should be legal and not illegal. However, family, comment down below what you guys think about this. On that note, family, peace.